Welcome to another Legal Tech Talk session. My name's Frances Anderson. I'm the MD of Netlaw Media. So I'm delighted to introduce today's engaging session, which is building robust IT. So it's a virtual roundtable where we are talking about technological transformation and innovation, with a particular focus on robust IT, which develops as firms grow and innovate. Now, our speakers are going to review the pitfalls that could be easily made, what steps should be taken to ensure the best solutions are implemented for digital transformation, better alignments with clients, and actually much more. Now, this session, I'm thrilled to say, is going to be chaired by Chris Ball. Now, many of you may know Chris, but for those that don't, Chris is a management consultant, retained advisor and business thinker and speaker focused on the legal services sector. Throughout his career, he has been consistently been a pioneer of alternative business models, transformation in the sector. His roles include COO and chief executive at mold-breaking law firm Osborne Clarke, COO for Europe and the Americas at alternative legal service provider Integron, and working at the Big Four, all four of the Big Four accounting firms, I should say. Sorry, Chris. He advised on a series of high-profile alternative business structure launches in the UK for clients, including KPMG and LegalZoom. Now, his legal consulting career began in 2011, and he has advised multiple law firms and other professional service organisations in the UK, North America, Asia, as part of Edge International Strategy Consulting Team, and as a founder of the Intuity Alliance. He is one of the busiest speakers and chairs at legal business and innovation events, including the British Legal Technology Awards and the Modern Law Awards. He chairs the Legal COO Network and co-chairs Bristol and Bath Legal Tech. Now, before I hand over to our esteemed panel and our chair of today's roundtable, as we're aware, we are live. So many of you have joined us before. So I encourage you all to join in. So do join us if you've got a question, want to ask the question live and join in the discussion, please do. All you need to do is click on your name in the participants panel to raise your hand, and we'll bring you in live, and Chris will be able to draw you into the conversation. Or alternatively, through the chat window or the Q&A function below. Now, without further ado, Chris, I welcome you and hand it over to you.
Excellent, lovely. Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. It's going to be an interesting ride, I promise, because we've been having some thoughts about what this whole subject means. You know, what does robust IT mean, and particularly what does it mean now, and what does it mean going forward? And we think there's some changes around what that definition looks like. So we're going to explore a bit of that. We are very keen to get your input. As Frances said, hands up on the chat, and I'll try and take a few breaks during the panel grilling to open up to you and see what you've got to say. Questions or comments are equally welcome. Just setting the scene to start off with. So building robust IT is our theme, and I think what we're getting at today is a little bit around the question of what robust IT means and what it stands for. Is that different today compared to what it may have been 12 months ago? Do we have to redefine what IT should look like in a law firm environment based on the experiences of the last year, but not just on those, perhaps on what they've catalyzed and triggered. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look a little bit backwards, particularly at the events of the last year, how those have really tested our IT and our infrastructure, perhaps shown us what we've already got, what we're capable of, but also provided new challenges and new obstacles. And then we're going to look forward as well, and see what next. I'm particularly interested in exploring whether the period we're just moving into, still a little bit unpredictable. I'm not going to try and explain what I think that period's exactly going to look like, or when it's going to start and when it's going to end. But I think we're all fairly sure that whereas we've been through a year where our focus has been pretty clear, and we've been responding to an external impact and in many cases supporting working from home pretty much exclusively. What we're moving into is a possibly a tougher challenge in that we're having to embed and support a genuinely hybrid way of working that could be very flexible but very unpredictable about where people are going to be and what time they're going to be working. And that is, guess what? It's going to have to be seamless. It's going to have to be harmonized, and we're going to have to look to make sure that whether people are working in the office or remotely at any time, where their colleagues are, we've got to connect all of those things up. So maybe robust IT in the future looks a little bit different. So that's what we're going to go into. I'm going to start with some questions to our panel, who I'm going to introduce now as well. We've got four panelists, I'm very pleased to say. I'm just going to go on the order they appear on my screen. No preference is suggested through this. So first of all, we've got David. If you could all wave at the point I introduced, that'd be great. David Aird. There we are, David. Thank you. David Aird, IT Director at DAC Beechcroft. I'm sure many of you know David. We've also got Nina Gratrick. Nina, thanks Nina, is the Head of IT Services at Watson, Farley and Williams. We've got Paul Morrison, and Paul is the Director of Products and Solutions, Real-Time Communications at Lumen. And last but not least, Joe Owen is the CIO and Head of Central Services at Cripps. So a mixture of mainly law firms, Paul from the tech provider point of view. And we've been thinking about some of the key questions. What I wanted to start with, which kind of puts the last year in perspective, is to step back for a minute, reflect, and just to ask everybody, and I'll start with you, Joe. When you look back at the last year, and we're now sat here in February 21, what's the biggest difference in your IT and operational environment now compared to a year ago? What's changed most?
We're all exhausted, maybe? No. Thanks, Chris. Hi. Yeah. Hi, everyone. So yeah, just sort of looking back on that, as you just to set the scene a bit. We use Citrix. So for us, when we went into lockdown, we were in a fortunate position that, using Citrix in the office, at home, whatever, that was fairly easy for us. But actually just making sure everyone had the equipment and we could support this sort of dispersed workforce, and suddenly 450 different setups rather than just 2 setups with 2 offices, that was the challenge we really had to focus on. And of course, how we then support the working practice that goes with working from home. So, there's quite a lot to think about in terms of how we support people to work differently and focus on working digitally. So many people didn't have printers, which I'm very pleased to say is still the case. So, really looking at that. And to do that, we expanded our use of things like HiQ and client portals to support our people and our clients. We rolled out Teams basically overnight. The first weekend we went into lockdown. Same with DocuSign, we sort of started using it, but rolled it out to the firm again overnight with processes around how to do that. And I think it really changed our firms, or the people in our firm's mindset to that kind of working digitally without them really having to think about it or us really having to drive it. So from the mindset's point of view, that's been great for us. I think we've seen a real increase in productivity because of that. But I think what all of that has led to is just a hugely increased demand. The demand on our tech teams to support digital working and quickly is so significant. So things like that, launching Teams overnight. Now they want everything launched overnight. But the attitude of forgiveness that we had when we went into lockdown, it's like just deliver it. We'll figure it out as we go. Now it's just deliver it really, really well, perfectly on day one, so everything works. Okay. And now that the focus is really on supporting the client, supporting people to work with clients digitally. So that's certainly where our focus has changed. But I'd say, the biggest change for us is just handling the demand. Once upon a time, our job was to convince people to use technology. Now it's to prioritize and say, hang on, one thing at a time.
So the expectation, which has gone up for things to be faster, very responsive, very quick. And as you say that, we started out with a bit of tolerance around that. Yeah, it's okay.
Absolutely.
we've lost. We've now got the worst of both worlds. It's like everything has to be really quick, and it still has to be absolutely bang on. That is quite a challenge. Nina, does that sound familiar, or and what else would you pick out from your experience?
So yeah, definitely very, very similar to Joe, but we also had a number of services which had been in place for a really long time that nobody knew about, and suddenly everybody goes remote and they went, but I need to be able to speak to my clients and I need to be able to do this. We're like, yeah, but you got Skype, so why aren't you using all of those? So what we actually found was adoption of existing technologies went up. The training team were busier than ever. You go from being able to schedule a couple of people in a training room and having to maybe deliver per office training to suddenly going, I've got 35 people that all need Skype training within the next 20 minutes, and they're all wanting to come on, and that was great. So a number of those things were really very positive. A bit like Joe, demand went through the roof, and those first couple of months the team was just across the board in all locations were incredibly busy with not new requests, but new ways of working. I just want to be able to do this because when I was in the office I did this, and trying to help them navigate through some of those systems was also quite an interesting one, because particularly from a service desk perspective, we were the central point of contact for so many things. I've gone home, but I need you to talk me through all those working practices of how I'm now going to be at home, because my only connection with the firm is through technology. So we had an awful lot of those things. Looking back, prioritization became an awful lot easier. You could push off all those projects that weren't contributing to your here and now. So some of those got deferred quite quickly, whereas before that might have been a committee or a talk or a prioritization meeting. That was, do I need it today? Absolutely not. Okay, we'll push that back. So I think from that perspective, those were the biggest changes that we saw in the way in which we were working.
Very good. Paul, you live in a different world. You don't live in a law firm, but you do work with a lot of law firms. What's what's your take on the biggest change, perhaps looking at Lumen and also looking at the businesses you work with, including law firms?
I think, I mean, from a Lumen perspective, pretty similar to, I guess, to the law firms. The thoughts of people working from home, especially pretty much permanently for the last year, was just not thought of. It was, people were either operational or customer facing and would be in the office quite a bit. So that's quite a big change from a business standpoint to actually having people at home. And we rolled out, we were on Skype for Business, and we went straight to Teams, just because some of the additional functionality that was required. From a customer perspective, interesting, we had a huge requirement right at the start for increasing bandwidth on the network. A real sort of panic for people to roll out Teams or Zoom or Cisco with us. And what was really interesting actually was the sudden use of video. For people were so used to seeing each other in the office, and all of a sudden there was a massive explosion of video. We've had customers on Skype and Cisco for a number of years, and the video traffic's always been very, very low, because obviously you're in the office, you see each other. All of a sudden people just wanted to use video all the time. So that was a real challenge, was making sure that the network was capable of supporting those requirements for our customers. So that was the initial requirement, and now people are sort of taking more of a balanced view as we move back into the sort of into the new way of working, and are taking a bit of a step back as to how they're going to introduce the technology in this new hybrid world. So from 2 different points, from Lumen and from our customers.
Paul, you mentioned you talked about that big shift to use of video there, and everybody was nodding away, and we've all experienced that. And it seems like we've flipped. Everybody likes a norm, don't they? Everybody likes what's everybody else doing, and we flipped from face to face being predominantly the way we communicate with a bit of phone, to this kind of most of that's gone out the window now and been replaced by video. It's quite refreshing. I don't know what you find quite refreshing when somebody says, shall we just do a phone call? It's like, oh yeah, shall we? That's really nice. I can walk around and make a cup of tea and do things wherever I want in my house for that. What's your, this is a bit of a what's next question, but you're a man who's in a good position to try and answer it. Do you think we're going to carry on with this level of video being the kind of norm for the way we communicate remotely in particular, or do you see a backlash?
No, I think remotely, definitely. I think more and more people will continue when you're remotely to use video. I think people have enjoyed having that face-to-face, albeit virtually, virtual experience. So I think we will still have that. The challenge is going to be where you've got people in a meeting room, for example, that are interacting with each other face-to-face with people that are remote. So I think there's going to have to be a sort of level of understanding the sort of dynamics of where you are remote working and you've joined a conference. I don't know about you, but in the past, before, when we were working, if you was working remotely and you dialed into a conference, it was very, very difficult to feel part of that conference. You weren't on video. You were trying to hear conversations going on in side conversations, and I guess that will be very similar, but you'll begin to see it a little bit more with the video. I think for me, it's not just video; it's ensuring. And I talk a lot about user adoption, and I think it comes back to you guys with your applications as well. Is you roll out the technology, which is great, but actually do the users use the full capabilities of what you provided, and how do you make sure that they get to use that? So not just with video, it's with from a collaboration perspective. It's not just about using video, but it's using document sharing and all the other functionality you get from these collaboration platforms. And basically, you want to be able to be be remote and in your home or wherever you are, but have exactly the same functionality as if you was in the office. And that's as providers, and I guess you guys as well as who look after the IT. That's your goal, isn't it? Is to try to make someone feel that they're not being disadvantaged by being remote.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's that point about you want to be remote and get exactly the same experience and functionality as being in the office. David Aird's giving that a good test at the moment. David, answer the question about what you think's changed most in the last year, but start off by telling all of our attendees in bitterly cold and snowy Britain where you are at the moment.
So I'm living the agile dream. So this isn't actually my view, but my view's not much worse than this. So I'm currently dialing in from the south of Spain. So it's 21 degrees and I hear it's almost 21, 22 in some parts of the UK today or last night, minus 21 or 22. So it's only 43 degrees of a difference. So yeah, I'm enjoying things down under. So, and as Paul says, it's great when we're all like this. And I remember a year ago doing before the lockdown, doing a budget meeting, remotely, because I decided to go away for the weekend, and so I dialed in, and it is just not the same being there when people are having the side conversations. I was the only person remote, so it is difficult. So I think it's something for us to look at in the coming months. How do we make sure that that's as cohesive as possible for people? Because I think this is here to stay, but it's just making sure that I think the pendulum's gone a little bit too far. So Paul, I would hope it comes back a little bit. I'd still like to see you guys every so often in person, but why not do 2 out of 3 of these like this, and then one where we get together, save the world, save the environment, etc. Spain. Oh, someone's dialing in from Australia. Someone's beating me. But hey, you're probably in lockdown in Australia in a hotel somewhere, paying a lot of money for that privilege. So going back to the first point, I think 2 quick points for me. So I think, and this is for everyone, it's nothing about my team. I think the innovation, and I don't mean the sexy AI, win an award innovation, but just the new ways of working that a crisis prompts. So we've just done our new Windows 10, whatever it is, the latest version of it, don't ask me, rollout. And we've rolled out, I think 3,000 PCs have been upgraded, including, I think 700 new PCs being sent out, all done via courier or remotely, excuse me, over the internet. If you told me that a year ago, that someone suggested that, I would have laughed you out of town. And if you told me we'd have had, I think we've had like three PCs that have exploded or not worked properly, out of 3,000, I would have, given you a lot of money to that's that level of insurance. We've also just rolled out 500 new phones before our Cyber Essentials Plus audit, which I think is next week. So again, all remote, no touch. Bear in mind in legal, we're in a really white glove, high touch environment. To do that, we would just send out the phone, send some instructions, a bit of training. Don't get me wrong, the service desks have been busy, but to do all that remotely, my mind explodes at that. And I know there's a lot of sexier innovation out there, but that to me, I think is completely different. The other thing, and I think more importantly, and I think everyone's touching it, and particularly maybe Joe at the beginning, is the change in attitude. So for 7 years I've been in legal, in 6.5 of them I've been pulling lawyers and saying, come and use Skype, come and try Teams, look at this. But why would I use that? Why would I want to share documents? Oh God, and all of a sudden we're being pulled the other way. I'm trying to slow down people and say, no, stop. We got pelters, if that's a technical term. We rolled out e-signatures to half our business. The other half said, no, darling, not for us. We're far too important. We're real estate. No one accepts it. And then overnight, we had to, of course, roll it out to the other half of the business. I think we took about a week and a half to roll it out. And we got a few people complaining it took us a week and a half to roll out this new IT system to half the business. But that is the new expectation. We need it, and they are the ones that are asking us, I want this, I want it. Everything is digital and lack of paper and all the rest of it. So it's a great way to sort of push us to where we should all have been, if we're honest about it.
Yeah, there's been some incredible things achieved, without a doubt. Joe, were you going to come in there?
Yeah, sorry, I was going to agree. I mean, it's particularly that mindset thing. I had one of the partners said to me when we were looking at our priorities last year, Teams wasn't terribly high on the list. And she said to me, God, if I'd known how amazing it was, I would have totally pushed it up the list. She was so anti-remote working at that point. I was like, you would never have used Teams to phone the person sat next to you. But actually the mindset changed. Or the behavior changed, sorry. She went to work from home and now suddenly she needs it. And that's the thing that's kind of driving all of this demand in tech change, I think that's kind of where it's coming from.
I mean, can you imagine them rolling out Teams over a weekend outside of a pandemic and getting away with it?
Yeah.
Absolutely no chance.
I mean, in my firm anyway, or it really being used.
Yeah, exactly the same. We'd have rolled it out and nobody would have come to any of the training, and then they'd have asked us what it was for, and probably if they could delete it from their systems because they didn't want to use it and it was cluttering up their startup. So yeah, I think that level of engagement and tolerance is also, so when we were planning, you always have that, we've got to get everybody. And I think being out of the office has allowed it to be much more organic. So you can put something out there and people can come to it when they need to come to it. And because you now have remote sessions and you have all of that sort of remote touch, they're not waiting on a training session for the next morning. They've got a 10-minute video that they can watch and they can do all of that within the time that suits them and less about us. So I think that's really helped with adoption as well.
And I don't know if anyone's seen, there's a question here from Mark Barrett, who's more or less, and I'm shortening the question a little bit, just saying, this is all great, but have all the other third parties, the other parts of the judicial system caught up? And I think they probably have to a certain extent now, but certainly in early days, for example, real estate, they would not, the land register would not take, the documents, electronic signatures. My father unfortunately died at the very beginning of COVID. He wasn't too great anyway. And for 3 weeks, when I called literally 2 days after lockdown, he died. The department, whatever it is, department that deals with death and certifying, no idea what to do, just a phone number, and they would call you back. Took like 3 or 4 weeks. They didn't know how to register the death, because everything had been done about, you must be there in person, you must have the death certificate, you must. And there was me 400 miles away, can't travel, lockdown, etc., and just from the crematorium to the undertaker. And that was a microcosm of people just not knowing what to do. But by that point, quite frankly, I think all of us were sort of on it and working as electronically as we could, or most of us, certainly in larger law, were doing that. So I think definitely the third parties in judiciary took a little while to catch up.
I think that's still the case, I think, isn't it? We've got big backlog on the court systems, big backlog on grants of probate. It's endemic. I think we tend to assume that everybody, all types of businesses, have done a great job of doing that response to the pandemic, and I'm sure that's true to an extent. But I do think law firms as a whole, in my experience, have done a particularly great job at doing what you've all just explained. And maybe there's some of the background to that is that a great amount of groundwork had been laid by people like all of you. And I know, David, you and I have talked about this for a few times over the previous few years, as you were all just saying. Maybe that wasn't really being absorbed or adopted quite as much as it should have been, but the groundwork had been put in, and the firms were able to pivot incredibly well.
And
that's all quite. Go on, David.
So I'm just going to say some days for different reasons. So we were incredibly lucky. We were sort of down the agile working, flexible working, working on our employee engagement. So we were doing it from that perspective. I was also pushing it from a disaster recovery, which I suppose is related to the pandemic point of view. So it was almost partly by osmosis. The two things came together, and then by virtue of that, we had everyone in Skype, everyone in laptops. So of course we just rolled from one. People were amazed, which was slightly upsetting for me that they were amazed. We're getting comments like, the IT works better from home than it does in the office.
Yeah, exactly.
Never goes down too well. But the fact that they were so shocked and amazed. I've got 7 pages of thank yous from people from around the business, which was really, really good. And I think hopefully we all got that, which was we've been unsung heroes, and then people could see all the work and effort that everyone probably on this call has put in for that to be as seamless as possible.
Yeah. What's been there've been all that good stuff has happened, and without doubt is the dominant story. But David, and then we'll go around the rest. What's been the hardest thing? What's been the biggest challenge, do you think, for you and your team?
Probably just, I want to say the people aspect, the team. Everyone's been pretty good. I've probably been, one of the ones that's suffered a bit more than most. I've been trying to phone around. I've got 110 people in my team, and I've done about 30 people in the last month or two where I've been phoning around. It's one of these things that it seems like a quick thing, but it takes ages, and it's been really great chats. Most people seem to be doing okay, but I think people are just fed up. And as you said, the video, some people are getting fed up of video and they want to put the video on and things, and it's just trying to keep the motivation going. I think there's lots on and all the rest of it, so to a certain extent it feels like it's been easy, but I think in some respects it's been really hard. And I think the people aspect, we've worked really hard. Town halls, I do sort of a town hall with IT team. I have an open door session where people can come, and I'm phoning them round, and my own team personally, literally, if I'm on a half an hour catch up with you, I spend the first 10-15 minutes, how are you, how's the family, how's the dog, blah blah blah, what's happening, and only then at the end it's like, how's work, how can we help, because I think people need that investment in their time and things at the moment. So I'd say the people challenges.
Yeah. Nina, what do you think about that?
So I would agree. I think also that sort of new stuff, that stuff where you get in a room and you have a bit of a workshop and you have a chat, and the things that are interesting and that have maybe you've come out from a meeting with a lawyer or something and you just need to talk that through. Everything seems quite formal now. Everything is a meeting, or you've got to have something in someone's diary, and you just don't get to chat. So some of those connections between the things that the groups are doing don't get made as quickly. And some
serendipity, isn't it?
Sometimes, sometimes it's and because I look after the international team, I sort of see some of those threads and work to pull them together. But I will occasionally hear of something happening in one of the offices, and I'll be like, whoa, where did that come from? Because it seems to already be quite, further down its, its development route, and we haven't either heard of it. And those sorts of things, I think, slightly harder, particularly for those pockets of the business that are quite self-sufficient, so they don't phone you up to complain, and they don't have a lot of new stuff, but every once in a while there is something that they really need, but they don't really know who to contact, so they sort of kind of get on and do it. And then you go, that you would have probably seen them in the office because they catch them in the lift or wherever. But yeah, that I think has been harder. So the big stuff gets done, and then the smaller stuff either doesn't get on a list or gets put on the bottom of the list, even though some of that is really quite important.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Joe, do you recognise that? Anything else?
Yeah, I do. It's the people thing again, particularly. We've had one particular team that's had quite a bit of turnover, a bit of disruption. So quite a lot of them are new, and actually trying to bring a team together who've never met each other is really difficult. And yeah, I've heard the phrase "I'm teamed out" too many times now. The video is great. It's all we've got. It's really good for that. But people want to be productive. We're all super busy at the moment. So actually taking time out for just a chat is really difficult. And it's just become such a difficult balance, I think, to really get your head around.
Yeah, and actually we've got one of the questions on the Q&A that I think relates to these points you're all making, which is, are we in danger of losing the personal face-to-face element, which I think the questioner sort of is saying, it used to be a case that you could move to video and you could move to phones and working remotely with people once you've established some the relationship face to face, and that's easy, isn't it? So, to work with people in this kind of way, and of course we've all been talking. We've got people joining firms now all the time. You just mentioned a team, Joe, that lost a lot of people, presumably replaced them. You've got trainees coming in. You've got all of that happening in a very strange world where people aren't making those connections. How confident are people that we're gonna be able to build that back?
Yeah, I think there'll be a mad rush back in the office if it's allowed. I suspect it'll be phased back in. I'm sure it will be, but yeah, I think there will be an initial flux of people where they'll go back into the office and then go back to this sort of, actually we want the 2-3 day split, and that will become more the normal. But I think to start with, yeah, the pubs will be busy, the offices will be busy.
I think as well, there are other innovative ways to get around it. So I've got, a supplier, it's Vodafone, who still do bits and pieces for us, and I've got a new account manager and his boss, and they've been quite good at building a report online. And we had a visit to their customer, their a customer experience center. And of course we couldn't go, so it was virtual. So they sent us, like the cardboard Google Glass thing or whatever it is, 3D thing. We watched a video on YouTube, then we had a collaboration space moment, and then we did. So it was kind of like, it wasn't the same as being there in person. It wasn't as easy, but it was better than just sat on a video call, and it was fairly immersive. They sent out, a mug and a few bits and pieces and that type of thing. So, you can try and do little different things to help, particularly the moment, so I'd like the caller, like the questioner, I'd hate this to be the norm. Humans are, the only thing that separates us, is our communication abilities from the animals. That's really why we've clubbed together as humanity and grown. That's the biggest difference. Yes, the brain and all the rest of it, but it's when we work together, we achieve things, and this is good, but it's not quite the same.
That was one of the questions I was quite interested in and we've seen it from a Luma standpoint, but actually trying to sell bit, actually bring new clients on. And you'd actually, how easy is it, I guess, for law firms or legal firms to bring a new client on when you actually don't physically meet someone? It's all virtual. When we've sold a couple of large networks now to customers, we've never actually physically met them. It's all been done, a tender, a virtual presentation, and it's all been virtual. And it's really difficult for the sales guys because you don't get to understand the dynamics of the people you're selling to, especially when you're in a competitive tender. So I guess with your guys, obviously you're looking to increase your clients all the time. Do you find it more difficult to bring clients on, in a virtual world, I guess?
So I think establishing broader relationships with existing clients is probably okay, but those brand new clients, something is about the interaction between the lawyer, the partner, and the people that you're bringing on, because you are dealing with in some cases you're dealing with such small margins, particularly if you're working with panel firms, around how much more can we deliver, and it really is sometimes down to the people and the feel. And that, I think, has been a challenge. I think trying to map some of that personal capability in this digital world, particularly for people who may not be technologically comfortable in all situations. I think that has been a real challenge for a lot of people.
Yeah, we've seen it a bit differently as well, and that making the initial connection is tricky. But actually, when you've had that connection, we've seen lawyers being connected straight into the CEOs, or really people right at the top of firms, because normally they wouldn't spare the time for a meeting and everything that goes with that. Whereas actually, you can go straight in on a virtual call. You might even only be with them 15 minutes, but actually, because of the speed of that, we've been seeing actually we can get in to much higher up that organization than we would have previously. So once we'd made that connection, we've probably done better with it, but making that first connection, that's tricky.
Also, again, I was just checking, it was public knowledge, but we were appointed to the EasyJet panel during all of this, and I know, and I think it was, don't get me wrong, it was mostly down to how they run the bid, and the engagement. But we were doing videos and our senior partner chatting about our horse and all this sort of thing. It wasn't just 10 suited and booted, male, pale, over 50 lawyers sat in a room somewhere with lots of printouts. You had to be innovative, you had to do something different. And Paul, as you mentioned, this is, I first just met, but Lumen are now a supplier to us, and most of that has been in lockdown. And yes, I have met our account team and they're great, but most of the relationships been built on that. And part of it, and kudos to you guys, was giving us VPN capacity almost overnight. And I'm sure we were a new customer and all the rest of it. So a lot of it is, yes, the connection, but then the results that you get. So you guys were fantastic. The proof was in the pudding. It was early on in a relationship, and I was thinking, well, we're going to be 2000th in the list, but you guys treated us, very favorably and got stuff happening for us. So that counts as well.
we've seen as well, we've been hearing stories recently about, now we've got to this stage post the original lockdown. We've had, big corporate deals have gone through all the way through with nobody actually meeting face to face, which is another one of those things that people would have said a while back, well, that's never going to work. How the hell can you do that? So that's testament to what can be done. One or two of you, when we were talking about challenges, one of the things that amused me was people's view of some of the specific challenges, and kind of, I think, what would you describe them as out there requests that you've had during the last 10 months or so. And I thought it might be worth just seeing what wins the competition for most out there requests. Everybody else listening, feel free to send in yours as well on the chat. We'll cover them. Nina, have you had anything that's particularly strange? You don't have to name anybody.
I've had quite a few strange. I think the one that was the most persistent was someone who asked us to change our DLP controls so that their child could use their laptop in order to upload their homework. Which, you sort of go, well, I could change that control, but then you'd be in breach of a whole number of other policies by letting them use your laptop in the first place. So yeah, that one came around a couple of times.
And of course, they've then got to be aware of cat video filters and all that. See, they probably wouldn't ask now, would they? They go, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Joe, anything you had?
It's not particularly out there, I have to say, but it just took me by surprise a bit, given how much we're focusing on digital working. I had a request come in to update our fax template, and I was just a bit like, our what, sorry? You want to do what? You want to spend money on updating our what? And yeah, that took me by surprise a bit.
David?
Probably my favourite one was, we had a few of the sort of, particularly the I spent this, can I get money back? I was thinking, but the favourite one was, and this is a genuine one, but please don't repeat it past here. Could you please go into one of the quiet rooms and take one of the lights, the personal light things, and send it to me? I do have a light on my house, but it's a central light and it's quite bright and jarring to me, and I prefer to have a softer light. Could you please send me one? No, go to IKEA.
I suspect a lot of officers have been denuded of some of their best bits and pieces. I've seen so many people who said, "Oh, I've had my chair and we've taken this desk and this piece of equipment." God knows what they look like, some of the officers now.
Yeah, we did that officially. We sent out a lot of kit, but before we did that, we had people trying to unscrew monitor arms from the desk, and we just like, what are you doing? Why would you do that?
Like a riot. It's like, just steal everything, take everything. It's free. It's free.
Yeah. Not locked down. Let's take it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're not coming back. Maybe we can move on to the forward-looking piece of this jigsaw. We had this question of, we talked about the last year, and we've got the question of what's next, and it's this kind of fascinating thought, slightly forward, given we're still in lockdown in this country, to a return to reopening of offices and getting back to some of these things that we've all been talking about, and people on the chat have been talking about, the body language and the personal interaction. And Joe's thought that there'll be a mass rush to get back in the office and feel what it's like again, and go to the pub and go to the coffee shop. But then what seems to be a absolutely universal in this country, and I'll reflect on some other points of view from elsewhere later, but an absolute universal view that nevertheless something has changed for good, and we're into a more hybrid model where people will to some extent choose to work from anywhere, be in the office, not be in the office. That's probably going to be quite hard to predict. Despite everybody's efforts to say, "Oh, these are your days," there's going to be a real mix of where people are working at any one time, and the IT infrastructure is going to have to support and reflect that. Which, even if, as David said about DACB, you were already encouraging remote working and flexibility, it's going to be on a different scale. So that's going to change. And so what do we feel that we're going to be grappling with, and the biggest kind of issues are to resolve around that new hybrid agile world that we're emerging into? Paul, I think you've already planted a few seeds with some of your earlier comments. What do you think we're going to have to really get to grips with?
I think it's an interesting one. So I think real estate will be looking at, can we make savings when it comes to actually office locations? Do we need as much office locations? There will be this, I guess, as probably as Nina and Joe and David mentioned already, that there'll be an initial drive to come back into the office. Then people will settle down into doing 2 or 3 days a week. So, I mean, I know within Lumen, we're looking at sort of desk booking systems, electronic desk booking systems, so that, we can cut down on the number of offices we've got and more centralize those offices and you book to go into the office rather than have a set desk, etc. So I think there'll be some requirements around that area. I think also we're seeing a lot of customers now say taking a big step back and determining from a technology perspective where they want to go in the sort of near term, in the near to long term. We've got over the sort of panic of rolling out Teams or Zoom or whatever, but what do we want to do moving forward? And I guess all around that comes the security around all that. So, we've rolled a lot of stuff out very, very quickly, and I'm sure a lot of it's been done very secure. But I think where people are expecting more now, more capabilities and more technology wherever they're located, the sort of security boundaries grown now to people being at home or being wherever they can be. So, people have got all the capabilities on their phone as well. So it becomes quite a difficult situation for people that look after the security, I guess, of the client data, where that's held in the cloud, where who's got access to that data, etc. So I think there'll be we'll see probably it'll come back round to we've had to do a lot of stuff very, very quickly in the pandemic, and now it's resetting ourselves back to actually what do we provide to our users. Is it secure? Are the users adopting the capabilities? That's where I see, but also as well, but as I say, from a purely working environment, I can see us going back into that, as I say, certainly in Lumen, booking desks and booking areas to go and sit for the day.
Yeah, and Joe, Paul mentioned your comment from earlier on. You are expecting there'll be a lot of people who want to come back into the offices, certainly initially. What do you think? What do you think your biggest challenges and issues are going to be over the next year or so?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're quite lucky in our Tunbridge Wells office can accommodate most of those people. It's not changed in size at the moment, so actually everyone could come back in if they wanted to. I think realistically we'll phase it back in, and by the time we've actually phased the return for safety reasons, I think it will probably be fine. Our London office, actually, we've I think been in the fortunate position that we've had to move office during this lockdown, so we're moving into a space that's smaller than we, it's smaller than we need, so there's not enough space for everyone to go back at the same time. So there's just going to need to be a bit of sensible planning around that. I mean, certainly in Tunbridge Wells, the way we're looking at it in my division is to have sort of team touchdown days where that zone is for that team on that day, so that they can spend some time together, and then the rest of the time you can go anywhere, but you've got to book a desk. So I just think there'll be habits people have got to form, because they're not used to doing that. They'll turn up at the office and be like, oh damn, I didn't book a desk, and I hopefully to start with that will all kind of come together as we phase that return. So yeah, I think it will come together. I think people will fall into a pattern of working in a way that works for them.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Nina?
I think our challenge is going to be around these impromptu hubs. Back to David's point, I do think people like to get together. I do think they like to come together, but I also think they love not having to commute and having the space and the time to do that. And I think, and we're definitely seeing it in some of our European offices, where I've got 5 or 6 people in a completely different city now asking if they don't need an official office. They don't want an official office, but they want a hub. They want a hub that they can go in and share some space on the days that they want to get together, and have some or all of the facilities that they would have in a normal office, but not a fully serviced office. So that's a real security nightmare, because that's not your home where you can be completely secure, and it's not the office where you've got all the controls. It's sort of that hybrid in the middle. And if we explore those kind of working patterns, we then extend every single one of the firms extends its recruitment capabilities, because suddenly you're not being defined by the people within your locale who are ready to commute. You are potentially extending your reach across a broader range of candidates and a broader range of expertise. So I think moving forward, yes, I think there'll be a snapback for some people, but there's going to be a real desire for that social engagement balanced with, but I'm still only 15 minutes from home type thing.
Yeah, sorry, I'm glad you'd raised that point when we discussed this panel before. That kind of expansion of recruitment horizons, I think particularly applies to it for any firm, but certainly for London firms where they've got that often quite a big commute for a lot of people into the office. Now, once you take that away,
yeah,
you can basically have people working from absolutely anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's I can see a lot of indications from what I'm reading and hearing from firms that they're really opening up to that idea now. We've got a question which I think very much relates to this. Mark Barrett, does anyone think that the workplace might be a colder environment? I don't think Mark's referring to -14 or whatever we are today when that return to work takes place, and especially when you go down the book your desk route and things become a bit 3 days a week, this is your day. And is there a danger that working practices might become disjointed? Interested in everybody's views on that, but David, your turn next. So what do you think about the issues and challenges we face?
I get where Mark's coming from, and I think we are going to go further down this route, but we already had to our new London HQ like 400 desks for 500, 600 people, whatever it is, 80% saturation. We had a desk booking system. It's Condeco. You have a card, you click in out your desk. Now, interestingly, before this, we actually think if everyone panics that they're not going to have their own desk, but in actual fact, 10 people, one's always on holiday, someone else is sick. So very simply, unless it's down 50, 60%, it's normally fine straight away. So one of our offices in London, the two moved into one. One was really old-fashioned, some cubicle offices. It was a ghastly place. I think it was described as the dungeon by the lawyer, but people were panicked moving into, we already had open plan, mostly open plan in the other office, open plan and all this, but I haven't actually heard anyone now moan. It was a lot of change management control to get to it, but people love the new place. It's open plan. There's loads of drop down spaces. There's loads of collaboration spaces, and generally it's just a brighter, nicer, more luxurious office as well, because smaller space, but we've spent more on it. Lovely coffee machines, you name it. It's got a lovely business lounge. You can have clients drop in and things. So it's just a great place to be in. In actual fact, I used to go to, say, as a visitor, I'd have to go to a floor of our building, find a desk. No one would talk to you. On the same floor, and we're only talking about, say, 50, 60 people on the floor, you'd ask, where is Paul Morrison? They'd be like, who? And he sat 3 cubicles along. It was just an awful place. And now it's much more vibrant, more alive, and just a much nicer place to work. Now, that said, if we push the densities and we also have home zones, so your team generally sits there or always sits there. There might be 10 in, there might be 15. When the density goes up, I get it, but probably like a lot of firms, we are talking about having more and more socials, doing more together, just to combat those sort of things. But I personally think it's for the better. These sort of things. I have not worked in an office since I've virtually started. Sorry, a closed office. It's almost always been open plan, and I know even today some law firms are still not open plan. And we've got study spaces and libraries and project rooms and things, so it can all be done. And honestly, if you'd heard some of our people moaning, groaning before it, I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Yeah, I think the upside for us as well is I think we'll merge between divisions and teams better. Although we'll have zoned areas, actually, certainly in central services, I think we'll spend a lot more time sat out with the legal teams, which we've always talked about. But because we always had designated desks, we never really did it. Whereas actually, I genuinely believe it will be easier to do that now. So I think that could be a real upside.
And they deliberately create these spaces so the print hubs are further away. Not because, they're deliberately designed that way so people print less, they forget, they don't go and get it. The T point is in the middle of 3 teams, so they all come there and, oh, hi, how are you? Yeah. It's all designed to get people cross-formulating and cross-selling and all the rest of it. So
I've heard, I know there's some concern, and somebody's expressed that on one of the questions that firms are thinking, or businesses are thinking at the moment about the cost savings. That we're going to reduce our real estate footprint, and this is an opportunity. I, I don't get that. I don't hear that so much. I know firms are reducing, but as you say, David, firms were doing that already. People realized that the world had changed, and they didn't need to have a desk or an office, for God's sake, for everybody. So that's already been developing. What I have heard quite a few firms saying, I think I heard your chief operating officer say, David, is we won't necessarily reduce the amount of space we've got, but we will probably reconfigure it. And I guess your London office is maybe already moving in that direction.
Yeah, I think it's both, but also I think we were talking about what the problems are. I think the problems will always be the people, the differences between different countries. So I know, we have some international presence, but not massive. I know that some people are like, well, in Hong Kong, Australia, we're straight back to the office, no change, So I think I don't think we'll be like that in the UK, but I think we need to be guard against that, because we need to take the best of this shit time, excuse the French, and make the best of it. But I think, even though we had started this journey before, it was quite patchy. Some teams are right on board, living the agile, flexible working dream. Other teams were like, you had to be in the office. It was still presenteeism. So I think we need to guard against those, partners that just want to swing back to the way things were. Hopefully, God, we've been doing it for, by the time we come out of this properly, it's going to be almost 2 years probably. It should be pretty ingrained that, I'm sat in Spain and I can do my job, really well. Appreciate I would be coming back and forward if we're in the office, I wouldn't be here this entire time, but we're talking about, for example, IT being fully flexible, so we will have very few desks if we're in. I'd like us to mix in with the fee earners and things. So.
And I think it's been a really great leveler. We've always had agile working for our lawyers. They've always had laptops, but our business services and our legal PAs, they haven't had that opportunity. And to get a legal PA to have permission to work from home was a paper and a HR approval and goodness knows what, and actually now there's a great leveler, and that adds a huge amount of value to them as individuals, to the way in which they're working, for their flexibility, their early mornings, their late evenings, all of those sorts of things, which are hugely important. If you are going to be delivering a more flexible service from your lawyers, you need all of those people around them to feel they need to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and finish early, that they can do that as well. Whereas when you're expecting two-thirds of the office to be able to work remotely, but 1/3 must be in, and they must be at those desks regardless of where everyone else is. I think that's always a challenge. So this, I think, has been a huge leveler for people, and really positive in some respects.
That's a really good point.
And I'm glad to see people in the UK seem to be embracing that. We've got a partner law firm, I won't name them or where they are in the world, but I've seen their people plan around this, and it was kind of old-fashioned in the, well, darling, we're all important, we're the partners, we'll come and go as we please, but anyone else that's a peasant, they'll have to be in the office and they'll have a desktop. And I just think, not really sure that's great for a team, sort of we're all in it together type spirit. So
I still come across that a bit. Even here, I think some firms have really struggled with that. Exactly what both of you have just said. Nina said, hang on, do we really trust all of our people to work from home and have a laptop? And is that really a good thing to do? So I think there are still some struggles. But what's very interesting, and my previous call today was with a series of colleagues who are dotted around the world, and we were comparing this issue, and it's very striking. So as you said just a minute ago, David, in Singapore and Hong Kong and Asia, they're back at work. They're back in the offices. There's no sense that I get from the Asian market that the pandemic, which of course has been much less of an issue for them, has caused any change in business behavior. So one interesting thing which you're all sort of keeping me thinking we have to keep in sight here is the UK legal industry was already operated in a bit of a different way to others for a variety of reasons. Looks like that might just be extending out again, in that we're going to have quite a unique approach to running law firms here, if large parts of the rest of the legal world are saying hasn't really changed the way we work very much. It's going to be very strange to see how that pans out.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to the bottom line, doesn't it? Happier people making more money, being more positive because they've got better work-life balances, versus people that are, I was having a chat with my guy that's in Frankfurt, and they've got terrible weather at the moment. So all of those things around it's much easier for me. I'm getting up, coming downstairs. This is my job. Whereas then, to a certain extent, when he was in the office, it's quite a schlep for him. So I think there is a balance. And I think when you're again competing internationally for talent, for space, for clients, etc., that flexibility is going to be key. And you have to be able to deliver it across all sections of your business.
Yeah, I think that mindset piece as well, right? So where we've been forced into changing behaviors, changing mindsets, rolling out digital solutions is much easier, or the other way around, we've got that demand. So actually getting people to use it is much easier. So yeah, I think that's really important as well. If you've got the UK, who've got a much more open mindset, they're servicing clients more digitally, and then you've got other countries who are much more, or still a bit resistant, or just aren't there. That's going to be a really interesting difference.
The thing about the access to talent, the new ways of working, the use of space and all the rest of it, the CO2 emissions, the green stuff, there are, amongst this misery, there are so many good things that will hopefully come out of it. But we need to harness them, and we need to keep a hold of them, or else we'll just go back to the same ways of working like they will.
Yeah, I'm interested in that. Just as we finish, because we're almost at time. Somebody's asked a question about well-being, and actually you've all mentioned that a number of times on here. But as we think about a future where people are going to be working like this more, and we know that creates stresses and strains on people, and we're going to be asking them to work much more digitally, which again can be tough for people. What are the mitigating positives that technology, the kind of things that you're all doing, is can give people? Where are the kind of really exciting things that we'll be able to offer people that'll help their work-life balance and their well-being in the next year or two?
I think for particularly the flexibility is so I think that really changes the way in which people approach their work. You're quite happy to work late if you know that you've got the flexibility within your working day to take a couple of hours off to, I don't know, attend a parents' evening or whatever it is, or go to an appointment. I think that flexibility is hugely important and will become one of those differentiating factors when you're moving to a new firm. Why would you go to a firm that wouldn't offer you some level of flexibility or some level of home working, knowing that firm has probably just gone through a pandemic and that everybody can work from home? So the benefits shift from all of the things that you might want to have had in the office to all of the things that enable you to really have that balance and be more of yourself within the environment that you're working in without really losing your professional capability.
Yeah, that's very good. Paul, can we expect anything? What do you see coming down the line in terms of features and functions that are really going to help people?
I think, obviously I'm probably a lot closer to collaboration. So, the collaboration is moving very, very quickly, and I'm sure there'll be new features and functionality that will become available in the world of collaboration. With Zoom and Microsoft specifically, they're very, very fast moving, and I think really I'm not so fussed about the technology. It's more around actually meeting business outcomes and understanding what the businesses require, rather than throwing technology at people, because at some stage, too much technology too much of the time will turn people off. Me personally, having the capability, having the flexibility to work from home, whilst it was a struggle at first, because that break between work and home is very different when you're sat up in an office upstairs compared to downstairs. But the benefits of being able to see the family a lot more, you miss, I don't have that hour commute. So I get to see the children, I get to see the wife. Occasionally is a good thing.
You didn't look as happy about that one. It was like, get to see the children and the wife.
And the wife, yeah. No, in all fairness, work-life balance is fantastic. There is the flip side. You've got to try and break that. And I think a lot of people have struggled with the break-in between work and home, because you are at home. I think when we go back to the hybrid working, and people do go back to the office occasionally and do have the best of both worlds. And as long as there's you've got the support there from the business around, having all that you need wherever you are located is really what you want. And I think that's where you'll start recruiting the better people, because those firms that embrace that will have the people that want to come and work for them.
We talked about that before, didn't we? We don't work from home anymore. We live at work. So that's the difference, isn't it?
And we've got to break that, haven't we? We've got to be able to do better, I think. But I like the point you both raised there of firms will start to differentiate. People will look at firms and say, look, we know you can all do this. Some of you have chosen to really take it and run with it and make it work and make our lives easier, and some of you have chosen not to. That will be a very interesting battleground for the next couple of years. We are at time, sadly. Usual thing, we carry on forever, but we can't. So we better say thanks to all of you who've been speaking, all our panelists. Brilliant. Thanks for all your effort, David, Nina, Joe, Paul. Thanks for everybody else for joining in. Thanks for your questions. Francis, did you want to top us off?
I will. I'm just coming in the back end listening, because I have to admit there was me nodding away in the sense of well-being and everything else. But thank you for everybody who was listening to us today, and Chris chairing it was fantastic as ever. And thank you to all of you who joined us, as panelists, because it's the first time, Joe, Nina, that you've joined us, and also Paul. So I look forward to the next one, and the next one will be next week, which will be great, on agile movement. So I look forward to welcoming everybody then. So thank you.